The January 6th House Select Committee is set to hold its first public hearing Thursday. Their findings are set to be presented as a recent NBC News poll shows a decreasing number of Americans see former President Trump as solely or mainly responsible for inciting the attack, just 45%, while 55% believe he is only somewhat or not really responsible. Meantime, on Monday afternoon, the Justice Department announced charges of seditious conspiracy for Enrique Tarrio and 4 other members of the Proud Boys for their roles in the January 6th attack on the Capitol. For more, let's bring in CBS News chief election and campaign correspondent Robert Costa. Joins us from Capitol Hill. So, Bob, what more can you tell us about these charges, these new charges against Tarrio and the Proud Boys, and the timing of all this?
Scott, great to be with you. There's no one who has covered the Proud Boys more at CBS News than you. And what we have seen from this group over the years is a group of far-right organizers who have now become front and center in the January 6 investigations. And I say plural for a reason. The House committee, which begins its next phase of public hearings this week, has certainly focused on the Proud Boys to some extent in its own probe. But the perhaps more intriguing probe at this time is the ongoing Justice Department grand jury investigation, which continues to cast a wide net over the events of January 6 and the weeks leading up to it. And they are not afraid, it appears, based on these indictments, of going after the charge of sedition, which is a highly unusual charge, to say the least.
And we note in the new superseding indictment there are some unnamed people, which means there are more shoes to drop as the charging documents keep rolling in. You spoke with Congresswoman Liz Cheney about former President Trump's involvement in the January 6th attack. Let me play some of that exchange. It was a great interview.
We are not in a situation where former President Trump has expressed any sense of remorse about what happened. We are, in fact, in a situation where he continues to use even more extreme language, frankly, than the language that caused the attack. And so people must pay attention.
What else did the Congresswoman say about the former president?
She said that the Republican Party, in her view, remains a cult of personality around former President Donald Trump. And that is a conclusion she has reached as vice chair of this committee going on months now. And it is said as someone who 90% of the time during the Trump presidency voted with President Trump. This is a conservative member of Congress when it comes to policy. But when it comes to the question of democracy and the peaceful transfer of power in the matters around January 6th, Congresswoman Cheney has fully broken with the Republican leadership, with the former president, and she believes that they stay with him, in part because of fear of his political capital. But she added, when I pressed about this, that she believes House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy is operating in part due to political calculation. She called it craven, that he believes the Speaker's gavel is within his reach as long as he stays close to former President Trump, and that's why he's doing so.
What a historic falling out between 2 former colleagues in Republican House leadership. According to your reporting, Bob, what role will the Department of Justice and the judiciary play in the investigation moving forward?
The committee will ultimately decide, after it's done this phase of public hearings, whether to issue a criminal referral. It was interesting that Congresswoman Cheney did say in the affirmative that she believed what happened on January 6th and the events leading up to it were a, quote, conspiracy. I pressed her on that point, whether it merits a criminal conspiracy referral of defrauding the American people and trying to obstruct an act of Congress, the certification of an election, remains to be seen. The committee has not revealed its hand on exactly how it's going to play its recommendation, if any, to the Justice Department. But what is clear is this committee wants to lay out many facets of evidence, from depositions to videos to images, that paint a portrait of what the Congresswoman believes and others was a conspiracy to overturn an election.
So the committee is putting on a primetime show Thursday. That's a big responsibility. It's a big undertaking. What else can you tell us about the preparations they're making?
In some ways, it's a show, but it has to be more than that for this committee to have the impact it wants. This is not a television episode, even though it will be aired on prime time. This is American democracy. A peaceful transfer of power was disrupted. Can they go beyond reminding people of the horror and violence of that day and bring in a new acknowledgement to the American people of the legal and political crusade that was behind the scenes happening alongside the operations on the ground that led to the violence and the attack itself? But what about the efforts to object to the election, to overturn the election, to try to have Vice President Pence walk away from the lectern, to try to push the election into the House? All of these facets of January 6th were playing out from the Trump White House, often spearheaded by President Trump himself. And the committee's challenge at this point is bringing people's attention to those issues, to those fronts, as much as they bring a spotlight onto the issues of the violence and images and videos we have not seen on that part of the investigation.
Good work, Robert Costa. We look forward to having your reporting as part of the coverage Thursday night, 8 p.m. Eastern.
Thank
Bob,
you.
thanks for the time.
Appreciate it.